You know that feeling, staring at a blank, constructed response prompt on your teaching exam and the panic starts to set in? Yeah, you are definitely not alone. But here's the thing, it's not about guessing what the scorers want. It's about showing them you already know how to teach reading. So, how do you take all of that knowledge you have in your head and turn it into a high-scoring answer? Well, let's dive into exactly that. See, there's a specific framework that scorers are looking for, and today we're going to walk through it step by step. Our roadmap for this is what's called the Fab Five of reading. Honestly, this is the foundation for pretty much every reading question you're going to face. We'll touch on each of these pillars, and by the end, you'll know exactly how to build a really powerful response. So let's start with the big picture. The Fab Five are the essential skills that all students need to master, and they build on each other. You have to get one before you can really move to the next, and they all lead to that ultimate goal of reading, which is, of course, comprehension. And here they are. You've got phonological and phonemic awareness, then phonics, then fluency, vocabulary, and finally, comprehension. Just internalizing these 5 pillars, that's the key to crafting a solid response for just about any reading prompt. So let's start with that first one. First up, phonological and phonemic awareness. Now, the most important thing to remember here is that this is all about the sounds in words. It's an activity you could literally do in the dark because it has absolutely nothing to do with seeing letters on a page. Simply put, it's the ability to hear and, play around with sounds. This could be big chunks of sound, like rhyming words, or it can get all the way down to the smallest individual sounds in a word. Now, it's really crucial to know the difference between these two. Phonological awareness is about those bigger chunks. So think about breaking the word stick into its onset, that's the st, and its rhyme, the ick. But phonemic awareness gets way more granular. It's about breaking stick into its 4 individual sounds, s, t, I, k. So if a prompt asks you for strategies here, you could mention something like sound deletion. You ask a student, what's stick without the S sound? And they'd say tick. Or for a more advanced skill, you could talk about sound substitution, asking a student to change the A sound in math to an O sound to make moth. That shows they can manipulate sounds at a much higher level. Okay, so once a student can hear the sounds, the next logical step is connecting those sounds to actual letters, and we call that phonics. After they can decode words, the goal is to read those words smoothly, automatically, and that brings us to our next pillar, building fluency. Fluency is often misunderstood as just reading fast, but it's really a 3-part skill. You've got accuracy, reading the words correctly, you've got rate, reading at a good pace, and you've got prosody. That's just a fancy word for reading with the right expression and tone to actually show you understand the meaning. All 3 are absolutely essential. So what are some great strategies you could write about? Well, repeated reading is the #1 go-to. Having students read the same short passage a few times is incredibly effective. You could also bring up choral reading, where the whole class reads together, or echo reading, where the student repeats a line right after the teacher. And this gets to the heart of what makes a high-scoring answer, the why. You don't just name a strategy, you explain why it works. So why does repeated reading work? Because it builds a student's confidence and their automaticity, which frees up their brain power to focus on what the text actually means. All right, so now a student can read the words fluently, but do they actually know what those words mean? This is where vocabulary comes in. It's the bridge between just reading words and really understanding the story. A fantastic strategy to write about here is teaching students how to use context clues instead of just grabbing a dictionary right away. And you can break this down. You could mention semantic cues, which is using the meaning of the other words in the sentence, or syntactic cues, which are basically grammar clues, and even graphophonic cues, which is using the word's spelling to figure it out. And beyond context clues, you could describe a really dynamic classroom activity. Instead of just having kids look up definitions, you could talk about an interactive word wall where students physically sort words into categories, or using word sorts to group words by their features. The key is to show that you get it. Active instruction, not passive memorization, is what really builds a student's vocabulary. This brings us to the final, and really the most important piece of the puzzle, comprehension. This is where all the other skills finally come together to create meaning. I mean, it's the whole point of reading, right? The absolute key to comprehension is a concept called metacognition. It sounds like a fancy word, but it's actually pretty simple. It's thinking about our thinking. When we teach students to be aware of their own thought process as they read, we give them the power to solve their own comprehension problems. So how do you teach that? Well, the gold standard strategy is the read aloud, think aloud. This is where you, the teacher, read a text out loud and you actually verbalize your own internal monologue, your questions, your predictions, the moments where you get confused. It makes that invisible process of comprehension totally visible to students. Some other powerful strategies to mention are summarizing, where students just restate the main ideas, or sequencing, where they put events in order. A more advanced skill is predicting, where students guess what will happen next. But the crucial part of that strategy, the part that's going to earn you points, is making them find evidence in the text to back up that prediction. Okay, so we have all the content now, the Fab Five. Now let's talk about how to package it all into a high-scoring answer. This is where we build that perfect response structure. First, and this is a really crucial piece of advice, you do not need to list every single strategy you know. The scorers would much rather see you pick one or two powerful strategies and just explain them with real depth and clarity. Quality over quantity is absolutely the name of the game here. And this right here is the exact formula to follow. Step 1, identify the skill area from the Fab Five, like fluency. Step 2, name a specific research-based strategy, like repeated reading. And step 3, the most important part, justify it with the why. You have to explain the pedagogical reason that strategy works using phrases like because it builds confidence and automaticity, which reduces their cognitive load. Ultimately, this is the message you want to send to the person grading your exam. Not just that you know some terms, but that you deeply understand the pedagogy and practice of teaching reading. This 3-step formula is designed to prove exactly that. So always remember to connect every strategy you mention back to real student learning. And as you prepare, ask yourself this: which one of these Fab Five components is the biggest focus for my specific exam? Focusing your practice there is going to make all the difference on test day.